What if some of the products you use every day only exist because they completely failed at what they were supposed to do? What makes this story so interesting is that some of the most familiar things in our daily lives weren't created through careful planning or brilliant foresight. They came from mistakes, from ideas that didn't work, from projects that, on paper, should have been abandoned and forgotten. Instead, they survived by accident. Take a medical product that was never supposed to change appearances at all. In the late 20th century, researchers were searching for a way to manage high blood pressure. The goal was straightforward: help the heart work less, reduce strain on blood vessels, and lower the risk of serious complications. Early tests didn't go particularly well. The drug didn't perform as hoped. It wasn't especially effective at solving the problem it was designed for, and doctors weren't impressed. But something strange kept happening during trials. Patients started reporting unexpected changes. Hair growth appeared in places where it hadn't existed before. Not just a little, but noticeably, dramatically. Arms, hands, scalps. What initially seemed like an undesirable side effect quickly became impossible to ignore. For a while, this created confusion. The drug had failed in its primary mission, but it was clearly doing something powerful. Eventually, someone asked the obvious question: what if the side effect was actually the product? Instead of trying to fix hearts, what if it could fix hairlines? That single shift in perspective turned an underperforming medical experiment into a cultural phenomenon. Rebranded, repackaged, and redirected, the drug became one of the most widely recognized hair growth treatments in the world. Millions of people who would never have touched it for blood pressure began using it for a completely different reason. What started as a failure in medicine became a success in cosmetics, proving that usefulness sometimes reveals itself only after original intentions collapse. A similar story unfolded decades earlier in a very different environment. During the Second World War, engineers were under pressure to solve highly specific technical problems. One naval engineer was tasked with designing springs that could stabilize sensitive equipment aboard ships, protecting it from the violent motion of the sea. His workspace was filled with metal coils of varying tensions, none of which seemed quite right. One day, while experimenting, a spring slipped from a shelf. Instead of dropping straight down, it moved in a strangely graceful way, tumbling end over end, as if alive. For its intended purpose, the spring was useless. It didn't stabilize equipment. It didn't solve the original problem at all. But failure has a way of revealing unexpected value. What the engineer saw wasn't a defective component. It was motion, rhythm, entertainment. When he brought the idea home, it was his wife who immediately recognized its potential. Not as hardware, not as engineering, but as play. Early attempts to sell it went poorly. Shoppers didn't understand it. It looked too simple, too strange, too pointless. But when people saw it in action, something clicked. Watching it move was mesmerizing. Within minutes of a live demonstration, every unit sold out. A piece of failed military engineering transformed into one of the most iconic toys of all time, not because it was redesigned, but because it was reimagined. Sometimes, failure doesn't come from complexity, but from timing. In the early 20th century, homes were heated with coal, and coal left soot everywhere. Walls became dirty quickly, and people needed a way to clean delicate wallpaper without damaging it. A soft, pliable compound was developed to lift grime gently. It worked well enough at first. Then the world changed. Cleaner heating methods became common, and suddenly the problem the product solved barely existed anymore. The compound lost its purpose. Sales collapsed. The product sat in warehouses, nearly obsolete. Its second life began not in a laboratory or a boardroom, but in a classroom. A teacher noticed how much children enjoyed squeezing and shaping the material. It wasn't just safe, it was engaging, creative, fun. By removing the cleaning chemicals, adding color, and leaning into play rather than utility, the product found a new identity. What had failed as a household cleaner became a staple of childhood creativity. The same soft compound that once wiped walls now filled classrooms, playrooms, and memories. The material didn't change much, the meaning did. Then there's the product that practically defines modern shipping. Today, it's impossible to imagine sending fragile items without it. Yet its origins had nothing to do with protection. Two inventors were experimenting with interior design. trying to create textured wallpaper that felt modern and innovative. By sealing layers of material together and trapping air inside, they produced a surface covered in raised bubbles. On paper, it seemed clever. In reality, it was absurd. No one wanted their walls to look like inflated plastic. The idea failed completely. So did the next attempt to repurpose it as insulation. By all conventional measures, the invention was useless, but its properties remained: lightweight, flexible, shock-absorbing. When a technology company needed a way to ship delicate equipment safely, the failed wallpaper suddenly made sense. It wasn't decoration, it was protection. The material didn't succeed because it was improved. It succeeded because it was finally placed where its strengths mattered. Over time, it became synonymous with packaging itself, to the point where many people forget it was ever meant to be anything else. What connects these stories isn't luck alone. It's the willingness, sometimes accidental, sometimes deliberate, to look at failure differently. Each product failed by traditional standards. It didn't meet expectations. It didn't solve the problem it was designed for. In some cases, it actively disappointed the people who created it. But instead of being discarded, these failures were observed, examined, reframed. Someone noticed a side effect, a behavior, a reaction. And instead of forcing the product back into its original role, they allowed it to become something new. This pattern challenges the way we usually think about innovation. We like to imagine success as a straight line from idea to execution. In reality, it often zigzags through mistakes, misunderstandings, and abandoned goals. Failure isn't always the opposite of success. Sometimes, it's the raw material that success is built from. The key difference isn't intelligence or resources. It's perspective, seeing what something is actually good at, not what it was supposed to be good at. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How many other failures are we surrounded by every day, quietly waiting to be understood differently? How many ideas were dismissed too early? Not because they were useless, but because they solved the wrong problem. These products didn't survive because their creators were perfect. They survived because someone was willing to admit that the original plan didn't work and then ask what else might. Not every failed product becomes successful because it was misunderstood. Some fail because they were ahead of their time. Too large, too expensive, or simply too frightening for the world they entered. And sometimes, success doesn't come from fixing the product at all, but from shrinking it, softening it, or waiting until people are ready. Consider a machine that once inspired genuine fear. When it was first introduced, it looked less like a household appliance and more like industrial equipment. It stood taller than most people, weighed hundreds of pounds, and required special installation just to function. It promised to cook food using invisible waves, a concept that sounded closer to science fiction than dinner preparation. Early versions were incredibly expensive, putting them far out of reach for ordinary consumers. Restaurants and institutions experimented with them, but the general public stayed away. People worried the food would be unsafe. They worried about radiation. They worried about what they couldn't see. As a commercial product, it failed spectacularly. For years, the idea lingered on the margins, largely ignored. The technology worked, but the form was wrong. It wasn't until engineers radically rethought size, cost, and context that everything changed. Once the machine was reduced to something that fit on a countertop, once it was framed as a convenience rather than a threat, people began to accept it, slowly at first, then all at once. What had once been a massive, terrifying failure became one of the most common appliances in modern homes. The technology didn't suddenly improve overnight. The world around it changed, and perception did the rest. Failure also hides in products that technically work, but lack a clear identity. In the late 19th century, one harsh liquid struggled to find its place. It was marketed as a solution for almost everything: cleaning floors, disinfecting tools, treating minor medical issues. It did all of these things adequately, but none of them well enough to stand out. As a result, it went mostly unnoticed. The product existed, but without a compelling reason for people to care. It wasn't essential, it wasn't desirable, it was forgettable. That changed when its creators realized something crucial. People don't buy products just to solve physical problems. They buy them to avoid social ones. Instead of promoting cleanliness, they focused on embarrassment. They framed a common but rarely discussed condition as something dangerous, not medically, but socially. The messaging was relentless. Bad breath wasn't just unpleasant, it was isolating. It could cost you relationships, respect, opportunity. Suddenly, the liquid wasn't just useful, it was necessary. A product that failed as a general-purpose cleaner succeeded as a social shield. Nothing about the formula changed, only the story did. Other failures are quieter, born not from fear or confusion, but from being slightly wrong. One adhesive was created to be incredibly strong. That was the goal. Engineers wanted something that would permanently bond materials together under extreme conditions. Instead, they created the opposite, a glue that barely stuck at all. It held things in place, but only lightly. For its intended use, it was useless. It didn't meet the requirements. It didn't solve the problem. For years, it sat ignored, labeled a failure and pushed aside. Its redemption came from annoyance. A different problem, far smaller and far more human. Pages that wouldn't stay marked, notes that slipped out when they were needed most. The weak adhesive turned out to be perfect for holding paper temporarily, without damage. Two failures collided and solved each other. The glue found its purpose not in strength, but in restraint. The product that emerged didn't succeed because it did something powerful. It succeeded because it did something gently, reliably, and predictably. A flaw became the feature. Sometimes, failure comes from aiming too high or too early. A product may technically work, but society isn't ready to accept it. Early adopters may see potential, but mass adoption lags behind. These products often live in a strange limbo, neither fully dead nor truly alive. They exist until the conditions around them finally align. When that happens, they don't feel new. They feel inevitable, as if they were always meant to be part of daily life, even though they spent years being ignored. Across all these examples, a pattern emerges. Failure isn't a single moment. It's a phase, a stage in the life of an idea that hasn't found its context yet. Some failures are obvious and dramatic. Others are quiet and drawn out. But what separates forgotten failures from transformed successes isn't perfection, it's flexibility. The ability to stop insisting on the original purpose and start listening to what the product is actually good at. What makes these stories resonate is that they mirror human experience. People fail for similar reasons. Wrong timing, wrong environment, wrong expectations, skills that don't fit the role they were meant for, but thrive somewhere else. Just like these products, people often succeed not by fixing themselves, but by changing where and how they're applied. And that's what makes this topic more than just trivia. It challenges the way success and failure are framed. If something doesn't work as intended, we're taught to discard it, move on, start over. But history shows that many of the most enduring things around us didn't survive because they were perfect. They survived because someone paused long enough to ask a different question. Not, why did this fail? But, what is this actually doing well? This also raises a more unsettling thought. If so many everyday products exist because of failure, how many current failures are quietly waiting to be rediscovered? How many ideas have been abandoned not because they were useless, but because they were misunderstood? How many solutions are hiding inside problems we've already given up on? That question doesn't just apply to inventions of the past. It applies to things being built right now. Technologies dismissed as impractical, concepts labeled as niche, products written off as mistakes. Some of them will disappear forever, but others will come back, reshaped by time, context, and necessity. And when they do, they won't look like failures anymore. They'll look obvious, inevitable, as if they were always meant to be that way. This is why this series doesn't end here. The stories we've covered so far are only the most visible examples. In the next parts, we'll explore failures that didn't just become successful, but changed entire industries. Products that were rejected, mocked, or ignored until the world caught up. Some of them are things you use every day without realizing how close they came to disappearing entirely. Others might still be in that uncertain space right now, waiting for the moment everything clicks. If you've ever wondered how many bad ideas are actually just ideas in the wrong moment, or how many failures are one perspective shift away from success, you'll want to keep going. Because the line between failure and breakthrough is thinner than it looks, and the next story might completely change how you see it.